personalities. They use videos and they use journalism and they use TV. Media is a big tool in changing societies and reflecting actually and affecting some decisions maker actually.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about the role of media today and how does it affect, has a direct effect on the decisions maker?
Okay, that's a very interesting question because media, sometimes media thinks that it doesn't play a role, that it's just a tool to send information from one place to another. But the truth is that media is a crucial actor in policymaking because media are sometimes used and even manipulated by different kind of actors. For example, when media focus or concentrate in certain stories that they find specifically interesting because they think the public is going to be interested on the topic, they are guiding public's attention to certain situations. And that is not innocent, okay? That has an effect. When you turn on your television every day and hear news about terrorism, about criminality, or about immigration, you become worried about it. And you start to think that it's a crucial topic that has to be addressed quickly. When you turn on your TV and you see that there are news about criminality, about terrorism, about immigrants, that has an effect on you as a person. That is very important for every human being, is the way they think the world works. It communicates a view of the world and the problems that the world has. So when media are selecting and framing the information, that is not something innocent. That has an effect. I'm not saying that that is always a strategy of the media. Sometimes they do it without really knowing the effects they have. But in the scientific world, we have studied very deeply the effects of certain kind of media frameworks and topics. And you can see that people get worried, extremely worried, when they are being constantly bombed with certain kind of information.
Very nice, very interesting. Okay, but you made me think now of my question, the first one. Peace is a very vast question. I mean, peace, stability, very important factors for any society. You know? And once these factors are shaped, you will have multiple problems.
Yeah.
And mainly the displacement.
Yeah.
You know? Can we talk about the importance of these factors, especially the peace, because since this platform is around peace?
Sure, sure. Well, of course, that is something of which you can get everyone to agree. Peace is important. Of course it is. Everyone agrees. But we have to go to the details. And the only way to go to the details is discussing topics one by one. Peace as an argument doesn't go very far. It's just a value. It's a very general objective. But we have to be able to operationalize that. Peace has to be deconstructed in different concepts and situations in which we have to make a strategy. So peace is influenced by many, many different factors which are themselves very complex. So we are talking about international relations, we're talking about economy, we're talking about colonialism and post-colonialism, we're talking about crime and international criminality. So these are very complex topics, each of them. So we need time and we need experts to guide us in each of these topics to make sure that we at least have the right information. We're not going to tell politicians what to decide. That's a role of politicians because they've been elected by the public. But at least we should make sure that the politician has the right information on the table, has the data, has at least the different kinds of issues that are involved in every topic. So we have to be able to provide that information to the different powers which are in different, local, regional, national, and international level, at least to try to make sure that decisions are made over information, relevant information, and specifically scientific information if possible.
Very interesting, very good, very good. So here I'm going to ask you, there is current debates on whether immigration is associated with the Muslim domestic and transnational terrorism, you know.
Hmm.
And this debate is going on all the time, you know. Domestic terrorism, or even transnational, is associated with immigration, and these debates are, let's say, having a big part in media these days.
Yeah.
So, what's your analysis about it?
Okay. Well, of course, there is a relationship between international terrorism and different international phenomena that go on. One of them is migration, international movements of population. The fact that we mixed these two concepts, again, is not innocent. There is an objective of mixing and providing a view that migration and terrorism share lots of causes and effects. These two issues are related, but it's crucial that we analyze them quietly and calmly. The issue of international terrorism is a very complex one, but from the perspective of the countries in which international terrorism has been suffered, we find very different situations. It's not the same to talk about terrorism in Iraq, in Syria, in Morocco, in Afghanistan, or in a European country, where concepts are different, attacks are different, even the number of victims are very, very different. So from the perspective of European countries, sometimes identifying international terrorism as foreign terrorism gives us the impression that it's not our problem, something we can live outside our borders. But it's not really like that. When we deal with terrorism, we're dealing basically with criminality. And like every type of criminality, we can try to answer in many different ways. We can answer just to the effects of criminality, or we can answer to the causes of criminality. And trying to deal with causes of social events like terrorism is much more complex. And we have to talk about crime prevention, we have to talk about social integration, we have to talk about multiculturality, which are very complex issues that have to be addressed from an expert's point of view.
Very good. I asked I surprised I didn't know the question. I'm going to do the same.
Okay.
For the self-segregation, like some communities, they come to European countries and you find them like segregating. They go into ghettos, they live together in one neighborhood, and then they create their neighborhood. And there is many examples in many countries in Europe, especially like in France, the suburb. You go, there's their shops, is even written in Arabic. Even in Germany, in Berlin, there's an Arabic street called the Arab Street. I mean, there is a kind of a self-segregation. These migrants or these immigrants, they chose to be together in a community.
Right.
They speak Arabic in the street, they have their shops. So what's the reason behind this self-segregation? I will call it self-segregation because it's a choice you can make. Once you get to Germany, to Spain, to France, you can choose to be in a community that looks like you, or you can just integrate in the society and be like everybody.
Right.
Can we explain this phenomenon?
Well, I'm sure a sociologist, for example, would explain it much better. But let's think about it for a while. Can people really choose whether they want to be self-segregated or not? Anyone can think of themselves building a new life in a strange country where there's a different language, there's a different culture, there's a different tradition, different religion even. How will you be able to integrate yourself in that society? Whenever we travel away abroad, we've all felt this sensation that we don't belong to the place. That's a very strong feeling. Of course, when you're a tourist, that lasts only for a few days and then you go back home. But when you're abroad, thinking that you have to build a life in this new place, things become very complicated. You don't understand the language, you don't understand the culture, you don't even may like the food. So when that happens, it is a very human thing to look for others like you. It's something we would all do. We do it all the time in our everyday life. We look for people that are similar to us. Or are we looking around in our everyday life looking for people that are opposite to us, or people that we don't really understand, or people that we don't really get because they have a different background? We don't. We look for people that are similar to us in some ways. Okay, that's from a personal perspective. I guess there's nothing to blame there. People do what they have to do to build a new life in a new place, in a different place. But then there's the public authorities' perspective, and that's where we have a responsibility. We have to deal with the issue that we may have big numbers, big groups of people coming to our cities, finding their place. If we let them do what they want to do without helping and without controlling, anything can happen. And you can see how suburbs grow outside huge cities like Paris. And if you look to the other way, to the other side, things may surprise you in 10, 20, 30, or 50 years. So there's a lot of knowledge that we have gathered throughout the years in the different experiences in different environments, in different cities, in the Netherlands, in Spain, in France, in Germany, in Sweden. We do have information, and we see how things work or don't work in certain moments, certain places, and with certain communities. So this is something that should not be left to chance. We have to take control of it, because there's a lot to study, there's a lot to decide, and there are lots of decisions to make. And decisions in these topics cannot wait any longer.
Very interesting, very interesting. Well, I am really done.
Okay, is that it?
Yeah, I think we made a...
Perfect.
There's challenges waiting regarding migrations, climate change, and economic crisis. I don't know if you want to answer this.
Well,
the challenges are waiting after this wave.
Of course.
Yeah. So let's talk about what are the main challenges awaiting regarding migrations. Like we talk about climate changes, we talk about economic crisis, and even crime, a rise of crime maybe. I don't know. So these are challenges associated in a way or another with the migration.
Yeah. Well, I think there's only one challenge. When I look at these topics, which are very complicated, of which we do have information, and of course there are things we don't know about these issues, about these very relevant and appealing processes and social situations and climate change. These are very huge topics. There is a lot of information we do have. There's information we don't have. So I would say there's a bottom line argument in all this, which is research and communication. Research is the way to get good data and information on anything we want to deal with, and then being able to communicate the results to the right people in the right moment and the right way. So in all these topics, there is one thing that we are missing most of the times, which is communication between the scientific community and the decision makers. There is some kind of a gap we have to build between these two worlds. Academics, experts, and scientists are many times hidden in places, in buildings, in institutions, and are not communicating directly with decision makers. And decision makers themselves find that sometimes it is uncomfortable to have an expert. They prefer to decide on certain ways which are not scientifically based. They are based in other interests, and so they decide that scientists or experts or academics should not take part on decisions. So I have studied how this communication works in different countries, and generally there are institutions, systems, there are structures, public structures that are built to make these two worlds come together: scientists, researchers or academics, and decision makers, politicians. But sometimes those structures don't work. In some places, those structures don't exist. So we have to make an effort to build those structures, or to be sure that they work the right way. Because if we don't, we are losing everything there. We're losing information. We are letting other kinds of information take the place instead. And we are losing money because we are funding research. We are building universities, research centers. We have huge libraries and labs, and we are funding that with our taxes. And if we don't use that information in return of the society, that is like a huge scam to citizens. It's their money, so decisions have to be taken at least based in relevant information.
Very good.
Okay?